Welcome back. Or if it's your first time, welcome. In my last podcast or blog or whatever this is, I said next time we should probably go to science. And I would talk about an archaeological dig that I was a part of years ago. But I've changed my mind. I want to kind of go to pseudoscience. That's a fun topic. But I'd like to read to you this time. Takes about 25 minutes. And it's Mark Twain's The Descent of Man. And when we try to define what a human is, we often go to Aristotle. You know, man is the rational animal, reasoning, all of that. Or we can go to anthropology. Man is the tool-using animal, opposable thumb. You can go to philosophy. Man is the moral animal. And that's where Mark Twain goes. But it's not very positive. In an earlier podcast, I talked about Kenneth Burke's definition. Man is the symbol-using animal. You could see that in I think my first podcast where I talk about nothing. And so after I read to you, then critique Mark Twain's treatise. It's a treatise that everybody at some point in their life ought to read. And I can probably read it better than you. So have fun listening, stay awake. And here we go. The Lowest Animal by Mark Twain. I've been studying the traits and dispositions of the lower animals, so-called, and contrasting them with those of man. I find the result humiliating, for it obliges me to renounce my allegiance to the Darwinian theory of the ascent of man from the lower animals, since it now seems plain to me that the theory ought to be vacated in favor of a new and truer one, and this new and truer one to be named the descent of man from the higher animals. In proceeding toward this unpleasant conclusion, I've not guessed, speculated, or conjectured, but have used what is commonly called the scientific method. That is to say, I've subjected every postulate that has presented itself to the crucial test of actual experiment, and have adopted or rejected it according to the result. Thus, I verified and established each step of my course in its turn before advancing to the next. These experiments were conducted at the London Zoological Gardens and spanned many months of painstaking and fatiguing work. So, before particularizing any of the experiments, I wish to state one or two things which seem to more properly belong in this place than further belong, which, of course, is what you do in the scientific method. You do a literature research and you have some basic premises that you start from that everybody can agree on. So this, in interest of clearness, the massed experiments established to my satisfaction certain generalizations, to wit. Number one, that the human race is of one distinct species. It exhibits slight variations in color, stature, mental caliber, and so on, due to climate, environment, and so forth. But it's a species by itself, and not to be confounded with any other. That the quadrupeds are a distinct family as well, of which we're a part. This family exhibits variations in color, size, food preferences, and so on, but it's a family in and of itself. Number three, that the other animals, birds, fishes, reptiles, insects, are more or less distinct also. They are in the procession. They are links in the chain that stretches from the higher animals to man at the bottom. Some of my experiments were quite curious. In the course of my reading, I came across a case in which many years ago, some buffalo hunters on the Great Plains organized a buffalo hunt for the entertainment of an English earl. They had a charming sport. They killed 72 of those great beasts. They ate part of one of them and left 71 to rot. In order to determine the difference between an anaconda and an earl, if any, I caused 7 young calves to be turned into the anaconda's cage. The grateful reptile immediately crushed one of them and swallowed it, then lay back satisfied. It showed no further interest in the calves, no disposition to harm them. I tried this experiment with other anacondas. Always the same result. The fact stood proven that the difference between an earl and an anaconda is that the earl is cruel and the anaconda isn't. And that the earl wantonly destroys what he has no use for, and the anaconda doesn't do that. This seemed to suggest that the anaconda was not descendant from the earl, but that the earl's descendant, or the anaconda's descendant from the earl. And it had lost a good deal in the transition. I was made aware that many men who've accumulated millions of dollars than they ever could have used have shown a rabid hunger for more and have not scrupled to cheat the ignorant and helpless out of their poor earnings to partially appease their appetite. I furnished 100 different kinds of wild and tame animals the opportunity to accumulate vast stores of food, but none of them would do it. The squirrel, the bees, certain birds made accumulations, but stopped when they gathered a winter supply. They could not be persuaded to add to it, either honestly or by chicanery. In order to bolster up a tottering reputation, the ant proceeded to store up supplies, but I wasn't deceived. I know the ant. These experiments convinced me that there is this difference between man and the higher animals. Man is avaricious and miserly, and the other animals are. In the course of my experiments, I convinced myself that among animals, man is the only one who harbors insults and injuries, broods over them, waits till a chance offers itself, and then takes revenge. The passion of revenge is unknown to the higher animals. Roosters keep harems, but it's by the consent of their concubines. Therefore, no wrong is done. Men keep harems, but it's by brute force, privileged by atrocious laws, which the other sex was not allowed any hand in making. In this matter, man occupies a far lower place than the rooster. Cats are loose in their morals, but not consciously so. Man in his descent from cat has brought the cat's looseness with him, but has left the unconsciousness behind. The saving grace that excuses the cat. The cat is innocent because he doesn't know. Man is not. Indecency, vulgarity, obscenity, these are strictly confined to man. He invented them. Among the higher animals, there's no trace of them. They hide nothing. They're not ashamed. Man, with his soiled mind, covers himself. He will not even enter a drawing room with his breast or back naked. So alive are he and his mates to indecent suggestion. Man is the animal that laughs, but so does the monkey, as Mr. Darwin pointed out. So does the Australian bird that's called the laughing jackass. No, man is the only animal that blushes. He's the only one who does it or has occasion to do it. At the head of this article, which I didn't include, at the head of this article, we see how 3 monks were burnt to death a few days ago. And a prior was put to death with atrocious cruelty. Do we inquire into the details? No. Or we should find out that the prior was subject to unprintable mutilations. Man, when he's a North American Indian, gouges out his prisoner's eyes. When he's King John, with a nephew to render untroublesome, he uses a red-hot iron. When he's a religious zealot, dealing with heretics in the Middle Ages, he skins his captive alive and scatters salt on his back. In Richard I's time, he shuts up a multitude of Jewish families in a tower and sets fire to it. In Columbus' time, he captures a family of Spanish Jews. Sorry, that's not printable. Never mind. In our day in England, a man is fined 10 shillings for beating his mother nearly to death with a chair. 10 shillings. Another man is fined 40 shillings for having 4 pheasant eggs in his possession without being able to satisfactorily explain how he got them. Of all the animals, man is the only cruel one. He's the only one who inflicts pain for pleasure. for the pleasure of doing it. It is a trait not known to the higher animals. The cat plays with a frightened mouse, but she has an excuse that she does not know that the mouse is suffering. The cat is moderate, inhumanely moderate. She only scares the mouse, but she doesn't hurt it. She doesn't dig out its eyes or tear off its skin, splints under her toenails in man fashion. When she's done playing with it, she makes a sudden meal of it and puts it out of its trouble. Man is the cruel animal. He alone is in that distinction. The higher animals engage in individual fights, but never in organized masses. Man's the only animal that deals in the atrocity of atrocities, war. He is the only one who gathers his brethren about him and goes forth in cold blood with a calm pulse to exterminate his kind. He's the only animal that for sordid wages will march out as the Hessians did in our revolution, or as the boyish Prince Napoleon did in the Zulu War, and help to slaughter strangers of his own species who have done him no harm and with whom he has no quarrel. Man is the only animal that robs his helpless fellow of his country, takes possession of it, and drives him out of it or destroys him. Man has done this in all ages. There's not an acre of ground on the globe that's in possession of its original owner, or that has been taken away from owner after owner, cycle after cycle, by force and bloodshed. Man's the only slave, and he's the only animal that enslaves. He's always been a slave in one form or another, and he's always held other slaves in bondage under him in one way or another. In our day, he's always some man's slave for wages and does that man's work, and this slave has other slaves under him for minor wages, and they do his work. The higher animals are the only ones who exclusively do their own work and provide their own living. Man's the only patriot. He sets himself apart in his own country, under his own flag, and sneers at the other nations, and keeps innumerable uninformed assassins on hand at a heavy expense to grab slices of other people's countries and keep them from grabbing slices of his. And in the intervals between campaigns, he washes the blood off his hands and works for universal brotherhood of man with his mouth. Man is the religious animal. He's the only religious animal. He's the only animal that has the true religion. Several of them, as a matter of fact. He's the only animal that loves his neighbor as himself and cuts his throat if his theology isn't straight. He's made a graveyard of the globe in trying his honest best to smooth his brother's path to happiness in heaven. He was at it at the time of the Caesars. He was at it in Muhammad's time. He was at it in the time of the Inquisition. He was at it in France for a couple centuries. He was at it in England in Mary's day. He's been at it ever since he saw the light. He's at it today in Crete, as per the article above. And he'll be at it somewhere else tomorrow. The higher animals have no religion. And we are told that they'll be left out in the hereafter. I wonder why. Seems to be a questionable taste. Man is the reasoning animal, according to Aristotle, the rational animal, such as Aristotle's claim. Twain thinks it's open to dispute. Indeed, my experiments have proven to me that he is the unreasoning animal. Note his history, as sketched above. It seems plain to me that whatever it is, he is not a reasoning animal. His record is the fantastic record of a maniac. I consider the strongest count against his intelligence is the fact that the record behind him, with that record, he blandly sets himself up as the head of the animal of the lot, whereas by his own standards, he's the bottom one. In truth, man is incredibly foolish. Simple things that other animals easily learn, he's incapable of learning. Among my experiments, I was this. In an hour, I taught a cat and a dog to be friends. I put them in a cage. In another hour, I taught them to be friends with a rabbit. Over 2 days, I was able to add a fox, a goose, a squirrel, some doves, and finally a monkey. They all live together in peace, even affectionately. Next in a cage, I can find an Irish Catholic from Tipperary. As soon as he seemed tame, I added a Scotch Presbyterian from Aberdeen. Next, a Turk from Constantinople, a Greek Christian from Crete, an Armenian, a Methodist from the wilds of Arkansas, a Buddhist from China, and a Brahmin from Benares. Finally, a Salvation Army colonel from Wapping. Then I stayed away 2 whole days. When I came back to note the results, the cage of the higher animals was all right. They were happy. But in the other, there was but a chaos of gory odds and ends of turbans and friezes and plaids and bones and flesh. Not a specimen left alive. These reasoning animals had disagreed on a theological detail and carried the matter to a higher court. One is obliged to concede that in true loftiness of character, man cannot claim to approach even the meanest of the higher animals. It is plain that he's constitutionally incapable of approaching that altitude. He's constitutionally afflicted with a defect, which must make such an approach forever impossible. For it is manifest that this defect is permanent in him, indestructible, ingrained, and constant. I find this defect to be the moral sense. He's the only animal that has it. It is the secret of his degradation. It is the quality that enables him to do wrong. It has no other office. It is incapable of performing any other function. It could never have been intended to perform any other. Without it, man could do no wrong. He'd rise at once to the level of the higher animals. Since the moral sense has but one office and one capacity to enable man to do wrong, it's plainly without value to him. It's as valueless to him as a disease is. In fact, it manifestly is a disease. Rabies is bad, but it's not as bad as the disease of the moral sense. Rabies enables a man to do a thing that he could not do when he's in healthy state, kill his neighbor with a poisonous bite. So one is the better man for having rabies. The moral sense enables a man to do wrong. It enables him to do wrong in 1,000 ways. Rabies is an innocent disease compared to the moral sense. No one then can be a better man for having the moral sense. What now do we find the primal curse to have been? And plainly, what it was in the beginning. The infliction upon man of the moral sense. The ability to distinguish good from evil. And with it, necessarily, the ability to do evil. For there can be no evil act without the presence of consciousness of it in the doer of it. And so, we find we have descended and degenerated from some far ancestor, some microscopic atom wandering in its pleasure between the mighty horizons of a drop of water, perchance. Insect by insect, animal by animal, reptile by reptile, down the long highway of stainless innocence, till we have reached the bottom stage of development, nameable as the human being. And below us, nothing. Twain's done a very good job of describing the descent of man. Not so much in a Darwinian sense, but in a true sense. Of what makes us different, what the disease is. Well, that's an excellent essay. Twain's, I don't know if it was accident or not, but he didn't finish it. So it looks to me like it's accidentally, he's hit on the central truth of human reality. The essay doesn't debunk evolution. It's not real science. He uses science as a parody, straw man, to point out that man, humans, he uses man because, you know, it's at a time of male chauvinist pigdom when he writes this essay. But he does a good job of making a point that man, or humans, have a disease. And the disease is the knowledge of right and wrong, the moral sense. Aristotle said man is the rational animal. Anthropology, they don't flat out say it, but the implications are man is the tool-using animal. Philosophy, like Twain, man is the moral animal. And Kenneth Burke says man is the symbol-using animal, inventor of the negative, or moralized by the negative. So in Aristotelian definitions, you're supposed to start out with what's the most important characteristic of the animal or of the thing that you're defining. Put it in a category. Aristotle used animal, so we've been using animal. Don't make the category so broad that it doesn't say anything. Humans are creatures, so are spiders. Don't make it so narrow that it doesn't say anything. Humans are Homo sapiens. All you said was humans are human. So I go for Burke's definition that we're the symbol-using animal as the most important characteristic. In the beginning was the word, the symbol, logos, that which controls the universe. Symbol-using animal, inventor of the negative. And then I disagree with Burke that we invented the negative. God invented it. He told Adam and Eve, you can eat anything you want in the garden. Do not eat of that tree, the fruit of that tree, because thou shalt surely die. And that's what happened. Embarrassment, shame, guilt came. They hid themselves in the bushes. When God came and said, Adam, did you eat of that fruit that I told you not to eat? The woman you gave me, she brought it to me. Got to get rid of it, that guilt. You blame. And then, they eat. What's up with the fruit? The serpent, he gave it to me. He tricked me. The moral sense is a disease. And it's the disease that's killing us. But Jesus struck a tent in human flesh, walked onto the stage of history for one reason only, to die the most horrible criminal public execution ever devised by humans, to pay the price for that disease. He healed diseases throughout his ministry. He made no difference between sin and disease, which is easier to say. Your sins are forgiven, or stand up and walk. Jesus is the answer to nothing. So if you don't want nothing, Man, that's loaded, right? Sell everything you have and follow me. The least shall be the greatest. Jesus doesn't make a lot of sense unless you realize that you have a disease. I'll talk more about the disease later on. But the bottom line is Twain is right. You have a disease. It's killing you. It's supported by the law. And the law was our schoolmaster to bring us to Christ. So stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherein Christ has set you free. And be not entangled again in the yoke of bondage. The sin and the law. Well, that's it for today. Subscribe in YouTube to my YouTube channel. Check out my website, www.voicewld.com is the entryway to all of my websites. There you can subscribe to podcasts and blogs. You can do it in YouTube too. I'll be back with maybe the conclusion to this vlog. It's not complicated. Life isn't so complicated. Explaining it in science is complicated and needs to be done. I appreciate science. I don't have any qualms about the evils of religion. If you want to make a comparison, contrast, essay between religion and science, you have a right to point out all the stupid things in religion. But Jesus isn't a religion. Jesus came out of Judaism, which is a religion, and he ended the law. Because religion didn't follow the law, Muhammad wrote the Quran, another law. Christianity, throughout the ages, since Antioch, where they first were called Christians, has fallen into the law over and over. Bottom line, I don't care what religion you are. The law was nailed to the cross, and we're free from the law of sin and death. You're a new creature in Christ Jesus. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things are new. And the Spirit resides inside you. You're still going to do everything wrong. But if you trust that Jesus paid the price for you, you're free from the law. And you should, have this overwhelming desire that's born inside of you now for what's right. It's called righteousness. And you are the righteousness in him, Jesus, Joshua, Jeshu, Messiah, Christ, whatever name you want to give him. He died, so you won't have to. See you. Still stuck in Arizona. I'll make it to Minnesota pretty soon, I hope. And I hope I didn't bore you reading, but Twain's essay. It's fun, even though it kind of ends as a tragedy. It's a comedy. It's a comedy in Christ. Oh, well.